Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care about getting beat 6-4 off of Yokohama in pre-season? Pre-season preparations are well underway now, and the saucepan is bubbling on the pot now, with people going mad about defenders, mad about transfer speculation, and everything else in between. This week, Quinny again here, of course, on the Flagship podcast, and I'm joined by Matthew. Matthew, good to meet you, mate. Thanks for joining us.
You too, mate. Thanks for having me on. Delighted to be on. So, cheers, mate.
Yeah, I think we're probably the only Celtic fans doing content now that are proper smiling ear to ear, just happy to be here and all the rest of it, because it has been storm clouds, hasn't it? This Yokohama result has really put the cat amongst the pigeons for everyone, hasn't it?
It has a wee bit. I guess, listen, it wouldn't be Celtic pre-season without a few sort of jitters and freaking out moments. It's our first real game, let's face it. So I'm trying not to panic too much about it. It was a strange result, which you'll see in pre-season. So try to keep my feet in the ground with this one.
Yeah, anticipation was really high because it's like Brendan Rodgers' first competitive game. We've seen the people, chasing around the training ground in Portugal and all that kind of stuff and trying to catch some action of the behind closed door football. But this is the first official match where we're looking at the lineup. We're looking at, how's he maybe going to set them out? How does he see this guy fitting into the team? And, Yokohama, obviously, we've been getting their best players brought over to Glasgow recently. And, they're halfway through their season. Top goal scorers in the division as well, 44 goals in 21 games in the league alone, never mind cups and all the rest of it. So it was definitely a bit of a test as far as a pre-season game goes. One thing I'll throw at you, Matthew, I think it's a wee bit maybe undersold about this whole affair, is that this is the shop window for all those Yokohama players, particularly the ones that are under the age of 25, because it's very realistic that, if you put on a good performance against us, maybe one of us, we've seen even Hearts and a few other teams go into the Japanese market recently from Scotland. So, those guys, that's like a cup final to them, so they were probably extra motivated in a different way compared to the boys in green.
I know. Well, that's a good point, actually. And I guess it's there's a little bit of irony in it all, I suppose, with playing them. Obviously, Ange was supposed to be there, former club, and of course, they are playing the Ange ball that we were so accustomed to. So it's possibly not surprising that a team that are in their flow and have got players that are, as you say, maybe looking to move on to different climates, is they've came at us and they've had a right good go at it. And so that's why I'm not overly concerned. However, it's just quite ironic. I think that we've taken almost a bit of a doing, if you like, in terms of the goals. Off a team who play Ange ball. So and Kevin Muscat was maybe putting himself in the shop window as well, because he's possibly going to be looking for his move into Europe as a manager.
Yeah, so probably for him individually, he's probably kicking himself a wee bit that he did play for Rangers, because he'd have probably walked right over to our job. If Rodgers was any way difficult with negotiations, it felt like, let's say that continuation thing. It worked for Yokohama, would it have worked for us? But yeah, it definitely maybe helps him establish, Muscat is doing similar to Ange, for maybe a team in, Europe somewhere else or lower end of England or whatever. So I think the Yokohama motivation of this game is definitely undersold from the Celtic fan base at this point, because even the guys that came on in the second half, they were... Yokohama also kind of rotated as well. So as we brought on our second string, so did they sort of. And those are the kind of younger up and coming guys. So I forget how you pronounce his name exactly, but the young lad begins with M, Mayashi or something like Mayoshio. He got 2 goals off the bench. So, there's a lot of, there was a lot to play for on their end as far as a friendly goes. Every one of those players are looking at transfers, are looking at securing their own place in the first team or whatever. But when it comes to the boys in green, I think everyone was looking at goals conceded. I think when I've been trying my best to keep across all the feedback and all the reactions from the game, it's all been about the blunder from Hart, the error from Taylor, the error from Starfelt, all these things that have compounded on, 4 of the 6 goals that were conceded. How did you see the defensive output from the goals that went in?
I would say that's probably the main thing to take away from the game, to be honest, is the kind of the defensive reinforcements or lack of them. I think we all know that there's slight issues at the back there. Johnston's obviously out, Ralston's now out. And we Carter Vickers not available until probably, I don't know if he'll get a run out in the next couple of games. Certainly hope maybe even towards the end at James's testimonial, maybe get some minutes in his legs. That I think the kind of fragilities that we've seen in the last couple of seasons, to be honest, could be a worry. So I know we've been talking a lot about the incomings of wingers and forwards and midfielders, but for me that is probably the area that needs addressed is centre half, right back in the interim, and possibly left back. So it is a bit concerning that we have conceded those goals. And Joe Hart, yep, he's got that in his locker. I think we know that, and again, that's probably an area that we're thinking needs to be looked at in the medium to long term.
Yeah, that calamity for his goal, where it just feels like something on the training ground. It doesn't feel like it's something that should happen in a real football match. It's like they're mucking about with the ball at the end of the session, kind of thing, and maybe he's done in from that was the kind of vibe of it all. It's not befitting a football match, that kind of that kind of attempt to claim the ball as it was.
There was a comment by Brendan. I think he sort of mentioned the whole, the defence should have done better before it got to Joe. So there's like a bit of a defence of Joe Hart, notwithstanding that he probably isn't happy at the mistake. But that comment, that's a kind of a Brendan comment, I think, to make, where he's sort of having that little dig, if you like. That he's hopefully recognised that there's a few issues at the back if we're not at full strength, which we're certainly not, and we may not be going into the first game against Ross County. So I'm kind of hoping that that's an area that they're actually all actively looking at strengthening.
Yeah, because I think like a few Celtic fans, or there's like a section of Celtic support, and I would definitely count myself among them, that feel that this whole, like, we're undefeated domestically when Vickers and Starfelt play together is a bit of a, how accurate of that statistic is that really? Because like we've seen, like you've mentioned, no Johnson, no Carter Vickers, the best half of the defence is missing, clearly, and then so the other half isn't good enough to carry what else is there, and it really showed up in a big way. And Starfelt did look strong in periods the back end of the season when Carter Vickers wasn't available. Having Kobayashi next to him, having Iwata next to him, he was, he looked quite capable in that Carter Vickers right sided defence. But by all accounts, yesterday, like it was not on, sort of thing. So I don't know if that's maybe a difference in the kind of tactical setup of the defence of what has been asked of him, because Starfelt is, like, had his worst moments in a Celtic shirt when he's asked to dwell on the ball, or when he is dwelling on the ball, or when there's a decision to make. There's multiple choice available, you could play here, play there, do this or do that. You've got 3 seconds, 2, 1, the ball's gone, so maybe it's a wee bit of change of instructions, change of role, perhaps. Maybe he's caught himself out a little bit, because physically and like at that kind of level that we play at, he's more than capable of a defender, to actually like defend one-on-one, boss a man, win a ball in the air, do all that kind of stuff. But it's the tactical kind of like fitting into the shape in the team, and then being under pressure, because like you say, they're playing the old Ange ball. And if you look at their front line, a lot of their guys, Anderson Lopez, and there's another Brazilian, forget, Marcos Jr. Like, these guys are like mid to late 20s, been playing Ange ball for about 3 or 4 years, if not longer, under a few managers at this point. And they will just attack weakness. And that's the kind of level of attacker that we're going to face at the, like, for 3 teams in the league, maybe 4, a real push, but every team we're going to play in Europe. So we need to have guys that can withstand that one-on-one, those guys that will smell your weakness and prey on it. Because that's, with the amount of mistakes we conceded, there was definitely, like, it wasn't an accident from Yokohama's perspective,
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I think you're right. Starfelt not was it originally a dubious. He was dubious for me. I wasn't really sure he was going to cut it, but he pretty quickly won everybody over. You put a ball into the box, he'll head it away. We've seen that numerous times, and when the back's been against the wall at Ibrox, and he's absolutely brilliant at that. But as you say, I think when you ask him to do something that he's uncomfortable with, it puts the whole defence kind of on the back foot. So listen, the big man should hopefully be back, and then if the two of them are starting together and Taylor's there, then it's maybe just that right back area. It's maybe also worth thinking about what was in front of them. Again, if Rodgers is looking at that slight change in formation, than what the guys have been used to playing the last 2 years, then maybe just that communication between the defence and the kind of the number 6 areas is perhaps an issue as well, and that's something that will be hopefully working on in training. But I'm a little bit concerned that who's going to come in if there's an injury or a suspension. I don't think Welsh and Kobayashi kind of cut it, and I think we'll be coming down to talking about some of maybe the outgoings and whatnot. But I just hope that's the area that they are looking at quite closely now.
Yeah. In terms of tactically, like, I think we all expected if we could keep Abada, he would probably be a very good Brendan Rodgers winger, very direct, goes straight to goal. And Rodgers has got the pedigree, he's got the track record of bringing guys like that up a level, from Liverpool, Swansea, Leicester, obviously Celtic previously as well. And he really did grab some headlines with his efforts, the link up between him and Daizen for a couple of the goals, as well as some of the play we got from Hatate. And it felt like from Hatate, Daizen, etc. Like, it's a bit of a homecoming for these guys as well, so they want to go back wearing the hoops, being at the big European team, coming to town and like showing their stuff. And I felt like Rio did really grab the headlines, but from that kind of progression from the old manager and the old system into the new one, I think everyone was the most impressed about Abada.
Aye, I think, and again, we've talked about the Japanese-based players putting themselves in the shop window. Maybe that was Abada's role in the game as well. With a few rumblings about him and Rio. I mean, you've seen him for the goal, the way he kind of took the ball, that one pass through, and that's the kind of Rio that I think we all want to see. Everything that we know he's capable of doing it. That getting the ball, starting things off at the other end of the pitch. He was phenomenal. He looks in really good shape as well. I think I noticed as well. He looked as if he was a bit leaner. So again, I'm hoping he's not putting himself in the shop window, and it is more about just wanting to show what he can do back in his homeland. But in Abada as well, that's what he's capable of doing. I think we all know what he is capable of doing. We just want to see it on a consistent basis. But is it going to be for us? That's the question.
Well, I've got a question, right? Celtic here were invited to the press conference for when Brendan Rodgers was unveiled, and all the press conferences he's had ever since. Sorry, that's not relevant. I'm going to stop that again. It's a different thing altogether. Well, I've got a question for you, right? When Daizen Maeda had his contract extension, the Brendan Rodgers press conference, his little interview around it, he referenced the fact of his versatility and about how useful he's seen him play through the middle, particularly for Japan in the World Cup. And I was getting messages all the way through this game about maybe Daizen's going to play through the middle a bit more for us, because that seemed to be, the sort of positions he was taking up on the pitch. And again, with Abada and Rio and these other guys, he seemed to really, he was getting in amongst the goals and stuff like that. Daizen Maeda, he was very much getting in amongst it. So it is going to be interesting to see, particularly the front three, the attacking. I know we're worried about the defence, but we're worried about the defence because we know we're going to score some goals, because from the looks of things with Abada and maybe some sort of evolution with Daizen Maeda, all those guys kind of maybe tying in better with Kyogo to form a really, that's our best front three. That's the front three for the best games, the big games. They get that cohesion, that synergy. So we want them to score as many goals as possible. And there is scoring, conceding 6 is obviously rotten, right? But scoring 4 in a game that is we're not, it's not a team that we're battering, it's not a 4-0 victory. It's a team that are very capable, so to still go and get 4 goals is a nice silver lining on the result, let's say, isn't it?
Aye. I mean, we've got Abada, he's in the wing, and Maeda doing his thing, so that was it was certainly, I think, the surprise of the game was not seeing him go through the middle, but banging in 3 goals. And when you seen the goals, they were what I would say is Maeda goals, instinctive, one touch finish. I think it is an interesting option. I think if he's given good delivery, he will score. We've seen him score quite a few goals. He's done really well with his goal scoring. This could be a little change in position for him. That he plays there for Japan. We saw at the World Cup. It was a more pressing role than actual being a focal point of a forward. He done a lot of the high press for Japan in the World Cup and done it really well. So it was good to see him. I think if you give him service in that area, he'll score goals. And maybe that's Brendan is trying that, and potentially he's going to be the number 2 or number 3 striker, which I think for a lot of fans we would be worried about that, because he's not that Champions League quality. But if you look in the league, the guy can score goals. So if we're getting wingers who are creating chances, I think he puts them away. He might have the odd one that he hits 10 yards over the bar or misses his feet, but chances are he's going to put a few away. So that was interesting to see, and it opens up another debate as to whether or not we'll dip in for a forward or not. Maybe this is now Brendan trying that to see if he can actually play that role, if Kyogo and O are not fit, or if it's for those games after Champions League games.
Yeah, because it does feel like you said, they're all those instinctive finishes. He's finding himself in the right place at the right time with the transition of the play, however it's went for each of the goals. And similarly to what I was saying with Yokohama, but like if you've got Daizen Maeda in that kind of fettle in that role, Abada and Kyogo, that's a front three that should be hunting teams, down and who's the weak link, right? It's the centre back. Let's go bully him. It's the left back. He hates the ball. Let's go get him, and go and make some chances. So really excited to see the 4 goals conceded. Next up is Gamba Osaka, which Gamba Osaka is one of the bigger teams in Japan traditionally, but for the last 4 seasons, they have been stinking. They've been a bottom half team for the most part. And I think this season is probably one of their better seasons of the last 3 or 4, truth be told, as well. Not getting any preemptive excuses in there, but they have been overall pretty rotten for the last few years, but they are on a wee bit of an up at the moment. But the next kind of question becomes about this preseason is the results, the performances, how much do we read into them? What can be read into them? Because they are a glorified training exercise. It's almost, we heard Brendan said the Celtic brand, it's a bit of a marketing expedition, and they're also getting some preseason work done while they're there. In essence, it's kind of how it's all built. So in terms, I'm really interested. I think what we can take out of it is for the manager, he's 100% trying to get the plan for the season in action. What are we doing from open play? How are we coming out from the goalkeeper? What's the route to go? How do we play from a corner? What do we look at for, So I think all those kind of things we'll get answers for in the Yokohama game and in the Gamba game. But in terms of Taylor, Starfelt, maybe Joe Hart to one side, because the goalkeeper thing seems to be an issue we keep talking about forever. But the defensive issues, I would hope some of them are just, they get cut out of pre-season and we don't see them, hopefully, in Gamba, or we don't see them in Osaka, I beg your pardon. We don't see them in the other matches, and hopefully it's a bit of a blip in that sense. And then their actual results, more goals the better for the strikers, and let's hopefully try and keep the aggregate down. In terms of what we can take out of the results or the performances, Matthew, how do you look at these pre-season games?
I try not to get into the whole Twitter debates about how important these really are, and really, I know people who are tactically minded will start to look at where players are getting positioned and double pivots and all that stuff. For me, I think the hard work will be getting done on the training ground, and I think that's where Brendan will be looking at the players more closely to use this period as to decide who does he feel can do a job for him and who does he think is not up to the task, really. The games themselves, he will probably use it for a little bit of experimenting, certainly those first couple of games, I think, over in Japan. Bear in mind, as you say, they're in the middle of a season. It's probably quite hot over there. He doesn't want to risk any injuries. So I think these games will probably be about just trying little things here and there. And possibly when we come back over and we play Wolves in Dublin, and we've got Forest Testimonial, which is a different one, but you could maybe actually use those 2 games in front of a Celtic crowd to maybe show us, right, here's my plans, here's the first kind of 15, 16 players that I'm going to be starting the season with that I trust, in a system that I'm looking to play to allow the fans to see that. So I tend not to take too much out of it. Certainly the defensive issues, I think we knew were there. And we've seen that yesterday, that if we've got a couple of key players out, that's an area that we need to strengthen. But I try and take the positives out of it. Look at the performance of Maeda and Hitati and Abada. I definitely think we should try and take the positives out of it, because these games can give a couple of players a wee bit of a boost for going into the season. I try not to get into the whole... We've been playing these pre-season friendlies for years, and there's been some freak results. We went toe-to-toe with Real Madrid in the past and in pre-season, and that probably after that didn't work out too well for us. So take the positives out of it, try and take the positives out of it, and then, as I say, I think the real hard work will be getting done on the training pitch and the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, and I think one thing that definitely seems to have materialised off the back of this pre-season adventure we're on so far is that Brendan's told people he's spoken to some players, and he said that they're not going to be part of the squad for this coming season. And based on some of the appearances we got in the Yokohama game, the Celtic support have made their feelings known on some of the, let's say, the tertiary players in the squad. I think Urhoghide, I don't think Urhoghide, Ajeti, and somebody else, Sorrow. I think they're all clearly been told already, like, go and get yourself something else to do. But other than that, Welsh, Scales, Turnbull, Haksabanovic, who could we be thinking about here? Who would be in that conversation? Who is proper surplus where the manager would be now saying, maybe you're not for the group?
I think if I've been the names you mentioned there at the start, Sorrow, Ajeti, Urhoghide, Shaw. It's mad to think that a few of them are actually still contracted to the club. We let Barkas go, we cut his contract. I just wonder if, because we've not got these Champions League qualifiers, there's maybe a little bit more time for the club to even for the outgoings and the incomings. But these guys won't be at the club come the end of August for the transfer window, one way or the other. Ajeti, Sorrow, Urhoghide. I'm going to probably throw Welsh into that, and possibly Kobayashi. I just think that if we are going to be really trying to resolve the defensive, not issues, but that Carter Vickers and Starfelt are our number 1 and 2 centre halves. After that, I'm concerned. So I think in order to create that space for somebody to come in, players need to go. Welsh, for his own benefit, we've seen it with some players in the past, the kind of Scottish players, that it's best for them to move on and try and flourish elsewhere. We've seen it with Liam Henderson and these kind of guys, that they kind of go away and can actually flourish in another country, as well as actually maybe in Scotland or England. Mikey Johnson, Mikey, I know people say, Brendan gave him his time and saw a player there. I don't see it, to be honest. I think, again, for his own benefit, he needs to move on. And then you start to go into the players who are not just on the periphery, but they're first team players. And I think Haksabanovic and Turnbull are very interesting one, especially Turnbull with only a year left in his contract.
Yeah, I think Turnbull is one of these ones where I could see him being good under Brendan, but with it being a year left on his contract, it is a dicey position, because it is a full extension, and then maybe it doesn't work out, or whatever, or what's the market value on him, in terms of this summer or in January, because then after that it's zero, sort of thing. So yeah. Especially with Turnbull, it's been a bit of a weird, from even when we're signed him but didn't sign him, and then we did sign him, and then we've played him and then not played him, and we're selling him and we're not selling him. I feel bad for the guy, because he's clearly like a great footballer, like at what he, that attacking midfield, shoot on sight, creative kind of guy. So I would love, for him personally, I'd love just all that to get ironed out. In the kind of aftermath, but of some of this, you've referenced it already, but Liel Abada has been linked to Fenerbahce. They've just sold their prize asset, Arda Güler, to Real Madrid for a bucket ton of money. They've went and signed Edin Dzeko and Dusan Tadic, who are both quite old, but still pretty good footballers. And they've set their sights, apparently, on Abada to be the wonder kid replacement, if you like. I don't see it personally. I think if you're going to play for us in the Champions League, or I don't even know if Fenerbahce are Champions League next year. I suppose they must be. But why would you leave Celtic to play Fenerbahce? I don't think there's the step there where it's even going to be on Abada's thoughts or radar. When you hear Abada talk himself, he's very much like, I'm still developing, and my place is Celtic now, kind of thing. So I don't read anything into it. I don't think Abada's going to go anywhere after seeing him start and be as effective under Rodgers in the last match.
I think towards the tail end of the last season, I know he had a wee niggly injury, but there was a lot of talk that perhaps, I think Ajax were floating about, and it was mentioned, which you can kind of understand the lure of Ajax, certainly. I would love him to stay now. I was at the tail end of the season, I was kind of thinking, look, we thought we had Ange, we thought we were going to be really pushing on again, and as we've seen with Juranovic and Giacomakis, if somebody's head's turned and they're not wanting to be there, Ange would have just said, right, off you go, get his maximum profit we can, let him go. So I was kind of on that side of saying, look, we'll bring somebody in, no problem, to replace him. And I know his goals assist numbers are crazy since he's come in, but now I'm more thinking that under Brendan, as you say, I think he could really flourish. I think he could take him to another level. I think Fenerbahce have made a couple of odd signings. Ryan Kent obviously been one of them. Kent on one side, Abada on the other. With Tadic in the 10 and Zeko up front is a kind of odd looking four. I think his head could be turned with Fenerbahce. I think Turkey seems to be this place that a lot of players, though it's a bit of an unstable league and it's a bit mental. Let's face it. There is a lure there, so I've got a slight concern that the fact that it's came out through a kind of decent source, Stephen McGowan. I think you kind of think there's something there. Is his agent starting to put some stuff out there? Is it now a case of saying, well, Kyogo and Maeda have been given bumper contracts? My client would quite like a new contract if he's going to be part of that front three. I think it's one to keep an eye on, to be honest. I really want mistakes. I actually think now we could push on to another level. And then, listen, if he flourishes in the Champions League, as you say, then let him get his move next year for Jota numbers, and we wish him well. But I think it's niggling there in the back of my mind. He meets the profile for a lot of these clubs, young and ambitious, and I think it's one to keep an eye on.
It looks to be Galatasaray, the only Turkish team in the Champions League at the moment. When I look at last season, it says that finishing second gets you Europa Conference League. So I know that can't be right. I think there must be Europa League or maybe Champions League qualifiers. But all the same, I think if you're Lel Abada, you think, I'm going to be the main man under this guy and we're going to be playing group stage Champions League, then, even if you were to go to, let's imagine Fenerbahce even did get into the group stages, he's going over there fresh. He's going to need to bed in. He's going to need to fight for his place in the team. Obviously, if Kent's his competition, that's not really going to be much of an issue, right? But all the same, it's still something to be done. Whereas he's settled in here, and if he's getting plugged in as a main man with a brilliant bloody team that we've got there now, I find it would need to be mad money. Turkey then now are kind of taking this little spot in the transfer window where they're kind of saving some people from Turkey, if you know what I mean, not from Turkey, pardon me, Saudi Arabia, where if they're not quite like, oh, we'll go to Saudi Arabia for the money, oh, well, maybe I'll go to Turkey for a wee bit less, and stay in Europe and play Europa League or Champions League or whatever's going on. So it's definitely getting a wee bit more interest this summer, the Turkish league, in terms of incoming transfers from some of those players we've already kind of mentioned. So, but I think for Abada, maybe the Arda Güler to Real Madrid pathway is something that might be pitched to him, but I don't see it being any different going from Fenerbahce to somebody than it would be from Celtic if he's going to play Champions League and kick ass, So I personally don't hold too much. That might be agent work, like you referenced, so it could be there. In terms of I kind of mentioned as well, and I thought, oh, this would be a nice wee link for something later, but we're going to see it against Gamba. We've seen it against Yokohama. They've got some Brazilian players in their front line who are saying 24, 25, 28, that kind of age range. We were linked to one of ourselves, who went by the name of Fererria at Grêmio. It's now kind of been debunked that was like an actual link. I think it was a lot more tenuous than people originally thought. But for a minute, we're still linked to another Brazilian winger in Tete. But we're maybe getting our hopes up with some more exotic signings. Part of the thing I'm seeing kind of knocking around with some of the transfer interest is the other guy who's been debunked, the Egyptian guy Reda. Now, Brendan Rodgers has said in his press conference he's never heard of these guys. And then even there's been one or two other ones. I forget who they escape me at the moment. But it feels like all the names we're getting linked with are stereotypical, Conference League, Europa League level targets. And we know we've got this big war chest. So a lot of the speculation now, I think it's people shooting in the dark. I'm not really reading too much into this because I don't think with the amount of money we've got flushing around that these are the next targets that would be signed. Maybe there's somebody for a rainy day or a crisis or target number 4 on the list or something. But I don't think half these guys are who we're vigorously pursuing.
Aye, I think you're right. It's silly season during pre-season with the transfer rumours, we know that, and I think the fact that Brendan shot them down quite quickly tells you that there's nothing in it. Tete one is interesting. He's got actually a decent pedigree. He spent time at Shakhtar and left there for obvious reasons. And I think Brendan, used him quite a bit for Leicester, given that they weren't particularly great. It's maybe not a glowing reference, but that is an interesting one where if he's a freebie or I think he's only got 6 months left in his Shakhtar contract left, it might not be that we're looking to spend a lot of money like him, but you're also kind of thinking, well, if Brendan trusted him and had him there, he's an option in the background that if Abada does go, I need somebody that I can come in quite quickly and adapt to the way I play. But certainly you're right about the guys that we're getting linked to. It's going to happen. It happens all the time during pre-season. I'm only kind of, again, just thinking about this, the war chest and the big budgets and that we have at our disposal is as we've seen with a lot of clubs, certainly a higher level finance than us, is it can be a bit of a curse rather than a blessing, because all of a sudden now the players that we were looking at who were £5-6 million, which is usually our kind of top level for spending on players like Jota and Carter Vickers, these players might now be worth 9-10 million. And the clubs are saying, well, you've just been given £25 million by a Saudi Arabian club. You want our winger to replace Jota? Well, he's now £12 million. And I think we are in a bit of an awkward position where I personally don't know if Celtic will still pay that money for a player. They might do it for one, but we're certainly not going to do it for 2 or 3. So I definitely think that the pond that we're fishing in is a slightly different one from 18 months ago when we were picking up Abada and Hatate and O'Reilly. I hope that the guys that they're bringing in and they're looking at are going to make the same impact as them. The guys from Korea, and that would be great if they can come in and hit the ground running. But realistically, for Champions League level, we need to sign a couple of players who are going to be able to come in and fit in quite quickly. And that kind of money that we're talking about that we have and able to spend, I don't think it's as easy to spend as people think, because I think the clubs then that are concerned, these players have got another couple of million then added on, and then they're actually being pursued by your Ajax. Look at the goalkeeping situation. The fella at Burnley are just about to spend about, I think, £15-20 million on a young English goalkeeper. Obviously, there's the English tax onto that, but if we were scouting that guy at Bolton Wanderers as a potential replacement, say for Hart, and meets the profile of a young up-and-coming goalkeeper, all of a sudden Burnley come in, we've no chance. And we're a bigger club than some of these teams, but I think we need to be careful not to expect too much, and not to be too disappointed if we don't go and buy a player for 10 million, because it's a really awkward time for those kind of transfers. But listen, we don't know what's going on in the background. We know Celtic do their business very quietly, and I'm sure they're working away hard in the background, which the fans don't maybe always know or appreciate. We have to just try and trust the process and not get too frustrated with it.
Yeah, and I think in the immediate aftermath, we've had some credible reports come from Stephen McGowan that Xavier Mbuyamba, sorry, I'm not quite good with names, but this is a different Mbuyamba, a former La Masia graduate. He's currently playing at Volendam in the Eredivisie. Volendam, very low-ranking team. But he's been very busy. His statistics this year have been very good, and he passes the eye test if you watch him as well. Very classy defender. He's been heavily linked to Ajax also, just by coincidence. But I think this is the sort of guy, obviously we've trodden this road with Van Dijk and maybe one or two others over the years. So I think Rodgers, if he agrees with the transfer department that this guy is, because he's been previously linked and previously ID'd pre-Brendan Rodgers, then maybe he's seen something in the defence at Yokohama and he thinks, right, let's just go get this guy in and make it happen, because these are quite credible reports by all accounts.
He'll tick a lot of boxes. I think anyone, if you go to the Dutch league and they're young, they'll tick a lot of boxes for how you want to play, how you want to play out from the back, how you want somebody who's calm and steady but also physical when needed. So he does, again, he ticks all the boxes for our policy. Young, no doubt up and coming, probably being scouted by other clubs, and of course Ajax are the big club over there that, like us, will get linked to the best talent who are in Holland, for the same here in Scotland. And that's probably one that I think's got a bit of gravitas to it. And we look at Jens, and it was a kind of similar profile and type of player. And maybe in another day he would have still been here, but I think that's one to probably look at. I think, again, when we compare the players who have come in the last 2 years to who we have there, I would probably say, right, well, if he's a step above Welsh, but he's not quite at Carter Vickers levels, then it makes sense to probably bring somebody like him in.
Yeah, for sure. Because with this talent ID stuff, it is all about getting the right guy in, as quickly as possible, and where they fit into the squad, it's going to be down to the manager. But the defense 100% needs reinforced. And one of the main complaints about Starfelt, like we've mentioned already, is the kind of like being on the ball and all that kind of stuff, or having to make a decision over a couple of seconds. And these types of guys, particularly coming out of La Masia and just general Dutch grassroots football, like ball play and all that kind of stuff, is ingrained into them. I'm not saying it's not in Sweden and every other country in the world, but they're pretty famous for it in Holland. Being pretty good at playing football. Particularly if you're getting scouted when he was even younger and getting brought to Barca. To learn over there. So yeah, I love the pedigree, I love the prospects of it. I would be a bit more hopeful. We should be breaking our transfer record this summer, ideally. Like obviously we've broke it with the outgoing of Jota. I think it outdoes the Tierney sale. And I think Edward is still our record purchase. I don't think that really beats the Chris Sutton purchase by much, which over the last 23 years, is quite meagre, really, to be honest with you, when it comes to transfer fees and the amount of them in that band, if you like. So I'm quite hopeful that we will. But again, like I mentioned earlier, I've got no idea who we would actually spend that money on. And like you say, it is hard spending that money because a guy who you think, maybe we could get this guy for 10 mil. As soon as his agent gets a phone call from Celtic, he probably just texts 12 other clubs, just received offer from Celtic, and then it goes up to 12, and then it's a bit of a war, depending on everyone's appetite to get the deal done. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. I'm definitely up for tempering my expectations on us spending the whole budget. I think we should be, but, let's see how it all pans out, because like Brendan said at the press conference, like it's all about the right players, and sometimes it's about his words to me, where when I asked him about the transfer business was, right at the end, he said, sometimes the most important thing is who you keep out the club, like who you don't sign. And the kind of remarks he made about the Fererria and the Reda guy, those comments, they kind of rang true with me again, back to there. But we did think goalkeeper was really top of the agenda for this summer transfer window. We then heard from Joe Hart. We then heard a bit from Brendan Rodgers, and we thought, maybe there's a wee bit of a bromance going on here. Maybe Brendan Rodgers can get like a last dance season out of Joe Hart, where he can really, leave his Celtic career. He's had a great Celtic career to this point. It's probably not been totally covered in glory. It's definitely covered in medals. And I thought Brendan would be the guy to maybe help him do that. But with the calamity there, Celtic fans again, myself included, are maybe like, do we want to run into the group stages of the Champions Leagues with us and goals still? So the goalkeeper thing, man. Like I made a little post yesterday. I put it around some social media places if anyone caught it. But at the moment, see if you look across Europe, the goalkeeper transfer market at the moment is in a really funny place. There's a few big teams moving some big goalkeepers around, right? But there's lots of up and coming goalkeepers that are have been getting and dying to continue getting first team minutes and moving up a level. And a lot of them, there's a guy in Japan, for example, who you've maybe heard, Suzuki is going to go to Man United and be the backup to Onana, who they're spending buckets of money on.
Yeah.
We're seeing all the Japan youth teams. Zion Suzuki is normally number 2. Sometimes they change. Sometimes Zion plays, but the other guy that plays most of the time is he's owned by Gamba Osaka, funnily enough. His name's Kosetani. And he's on the brink of moving to Belgium Division 2 on loan to just get a loan into Europe to get some minutes and all the rest of it. And this guy, to give you a bit of a flavour, there's about 3 or 4 other guys I could give you the same story about, right? But just to give you this guy's, he's been playing first team football for 2 years in Japan on loan at a smaller team in the league. And then this year he's been at Gamba, and they've got another goalkeeper who we'll see play Celtic. His name is Higashiguchi, and he's 40 or something like that, right? He's really old. He's like a club legend, It's like if Paki Bonner played for us all the way, it's one of those ones, And anyway, he's been at Gamba this season, and he's had a wee bit of job share at Gamba with Higashiguchi, and he's also been getting called into the Japan senior team. And then when I seen that happening, I'm thinking this is to help his work permit application to get to Europe, obviously, because he wasn't getting capped. He was just getting the call up, But I don't know why, but it doesn't seem like anyone in Europe has actually picked up the phone, and he's ended up like the only thing he can sort himself out with his wee agent in Japan or whatever's going on is this. But a guy like him could come in and play in tandem with Joe Hart, play as understudy to him for a season, and, who knows if that would really pay out Champions League wise group stage this season, like I'm initially worried about. But that's a plan, and that's you can see something happening there. It's a young and up and coming international. He's good with the ball at his feet. He's a good shot stopper. He's still got progression to do. And like I said, there's about 4 or 5 other guys in the market. There's a guy in the market now, very similar everything to what I just said there. But he's a free agent out of Barcelona. He's just been at the Spain under-21 Euros final. He wants to play first-team football, doesn't want to be on the bench. He's out of contract now. And nobody's linked to him. I don't see anything when I go searching, And that's a free agent, So a cheap guy out of Japan, loan with option to buy. We love a deal like that. Or a free agent out of Barca or a big academy in Europe. We love a deal like that, So there's plenty of stuff out there if we go looking for it. But I'm worried that we don't go looking for it.
Joe's he is a bit of an enigma. Let's face it. I think he has been really good for us. I think not just on the pitch but off the pitch. I think he's got standards, and I think he speaks so well about Ange, and he speaks so well about his time at the club, and he's bought into the ethos of the club, and all that's great. But he is prone to the odd clanger, and I think I see him probably starting as number one. I don't really see that changing unless there is something in the background that they are working on. But I think we need to bring somebody in who's at least going to be in and around the squad, getting games with a nod to thinking next season and after that. Somebody who is in that early to mid-20s, who, again, a goalkeeper can be the same as a midfielder or a striker. They could be looking at Celtic and saying, if I go here and impress for a couple of years, I could get a move down south to be the number one for Spurs or whoever it may be. So I think we probably need to be wiser in that market. Seagrass, I know he got the second half yesterday. He's not going to cut it. Rodgers obviously was a fan of Bain. He brought him into the club, and we've obviously gave him a new contract, which I think is to tick a box for the homegrown players. So he's going to be floating about certainly as a third choice. That middle part, then that second choice of somebody pushing Joe Hart and learning off of Joe Hart to then become Celtic's number one long term, is definitely an area that needs addressed, potentially in the summer, but certainly by this time next year. I would really hope that we've got somebody in place who is of the Fraser Forster mould, where they're at a good age and they've got a good profile, and they're able to really take the gloves for 2-3 seasons, and have a bit of stability in there. But I think Joe will probably be the number one going into these games, which is a bit of a worry. But if he produces what we know he can, then he's a fantastic shot stopper, and he can be a match winner at times. So it is an interesting position.
Yeah, it is. It's all the can be's and could be's and should be's, and hopefully, that's the part I think that keeps us all on tenterhooks. But no, man, I agree. I'm a big Joe Hart fan overall, but when he's at the end of his career and when you see these mistakes, like it's one of those ones where it has to be on the agenda. He's not going to play longer than another 2, 3, 4 seasons. No chance. So it's something that isn't going away. And for me, now it just feels like there's a lot of talent on the market, and once they move, they've moved. Then it's totally different. The ship has sailed. The cat is the horse is bolted. As they say on that one. So I think it's one that hopefully the club, because again, the goalkeeper is such a vital position in the sense of like we've seen with Barkas, if you've not got your goalkeeper position sorted, it's worse than a hole in the head, and Hart's good for us. I like Hart overall, but he's not perfect. He's not the best we could get, is basically where I always kind of fall down on it, for all the boxes to get ticked, as much as possible. So
I just wonder, my interesting point for me is are we going to see him grabbing the ball from the ball boys as quickly as he did under Ange? Is he going to be terrorising ball boys around the country to get the ball into play? That could be a telltale sign as to how Brendan wants to play when it starts from the back. Is he going to be a little bit calmer when sometimes when he was far too keen to get the game going again? So it'll be interesting to see how that starts. Yeah,
I think probably one of the other last things to kind of talk on that's kind of came up with the Japan stuff and the squad and all the rest of it is we were talking about Maeda playing through the middle yesterday. Obviously, Kyogo's the main man. And Big Oba, he's been quite active throughout pre-season on social media and all that. And a lot of people expect to see a really good version of O under Brendan Rodgers, but the guy we were linked to, who we're not linked to anymore, part of his versatility was a striker option. I don't think we need another striker option at the club, as long as we've got the guys we've got, really. But what is the expectations for O this year? Is he going to just carry on being super sub, or will we see him maybe even, I know not Ross County specifically this time because it's the opening game of the season, but will he maybe be the guy that just fills in at Ross County at home and St Johnstone away in the cup and these kind of games?
I mean, Brendan is partial to a two up top when it's required. I heard rumblings, obviously, with Maeda yesterday scoring a hat-trick, that him and Kyogo could terrorise a few defences. I personally don't think that would work. I think they would maybe get in each other's way a wee bit. So I think there's definitely an option for Rowe to be alongside Kyogo if Brendan decides in certain games that that's the way he would maybe go. I think it could be a season of kind of mixed fortunes for him. If he gets his chances and doesn't take them, then perhaps it's going to go against him for the future. If he gets his chances like he did most of the time last season, let's be fair, then it bodes well for him and it will build his confidence and he'll start to really push in the door. I don't think we will sign another striker. We'll maybe sign somebody who can play in that area. But the first half of the season might be quite telling. If we are still in Europe after Christmas and we're relying on Kyogo because perhaps O hasn't pushed on or Maeda isn't getting used up there, then it might be an area to start looking at because Kyogo, touch wood, could pick up the odd injury. We hope that doesn't happen. Would I be really, really happy that O's then stepping in a Champions League situation or a last 16 or Europa League run? I don't know at this stage. But he looks good. He looks sharp. He looks fit. He loves pulling the shots up and letting everybody see his legs getting trained. He's one of these ones. There's no short of confidence in the guy, which is good. I would like to see him get a wee run, but again, you have to play Kyogo, and if it's one up top, you have to play Kyogo. So he's going to have to just bide his time, do the hard work and training. There's definitely a player in there. There's a rawness about him, so I'd like to see him stick around and get that chance.
Yeah, same. And in some kind of other news, I suppose this week we had a new board member appointed. So Celtic have appointed a former director of Apple services in London as a non-executive board member, and this is around content delivery with the club right now in the modern age, the 21st century, and all that good stuff. Every club. The league, everyone in football, everything to do with football, this right now is all about content. That's what all it is. The football match is the biggest part of content, of course. That's what we all care about. But if you follow other clubs in any sort of way, you'll see that the media strategy of a club is a big wave that's going through football now, where the players, the clubs, the teams, they want to be like closer to the fans. They want to show the fans more access, more behind the scenes stuff. How is it really in here? What really goes on? How hard are the guys working? How much do they care? And all that kind of jazz. And we've seen tons of like fly in the wall documentaries and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure. I don't expect anything like that. I don't think we're going to get like a all or nothing Celtic kind of thing off the back of this. But if you're ever bored, if you look at Man City on YouTube and stuff like that, Man City do brilliant like content for like getting the players together and showing you like just them. If you know what I mean, you get to it's hard to put into words without it sounding all airy-fairy or whatever, right? But when I see this, I think it's quite good. So I think we all love to see the players like when they're like side by side, and it's like who's the loudest in the shower, or who's the blah blah blah, who's this one and that one and whatever. That's all good content. It's all good fun, So I think it's more going to modernize the club and move the club forward. In that sense, we'll probably have like a thorough Japanese content arm probably get rolled out as well, and like kanji writing and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's more of a kind of market strategy thing, or whatever. Did you see this yourself? Did you have any thoughts on it?
I mean, I think certainly in the last couple of years we have improved that sort of fan-player engagement and relationships, and it is nice to see the sort of human side of the players, and again, because I think there's a period in football where as soon as a player doesn't sign an autograph or say hello or give a shout out, then it's all over social media and they're apologising and all the rest of it. So I think there's probably as a duty now for clubs to make sure that fans do feel involved with the club at all levels. So it'll be interesting to see what the guy can bring. I don't expect any big documentaries or anything like that. But obviously, we have a close links now with Japan and possibly South Korea with a couple more guys coming in. That's definitely an area that we'll tap into, because as we've seen already, although there wasn't a huge crowd at the game yesterday, to be fair, there's certainly a buzz about Celtic being there. And it's all well and good when we go to Australia or we go to America where there's thousands and thousands of Celtic fans, and it's great that they get the chance to see their heroes. But there's probably untapped markets out there where we can really push the brand, as we would call it, into the ether of football. So I'm pretty sure that they've done their thorough research on the guy, and he'll bring something to the club, and it'll be interesting to see what he can bring.
Yeah, because I've got as one of the notes here is there's a current limitations on DVD distribution. Now, DVDs, I think at this point in time, are ancient technology, and we need more, like, the Celtic TV, people pay for the subscription over there. There's obviously YouTube, like we've referenced already, but part of the content as well is maybe stuff like, flashbacks, and highlight reels of like important players, important seasons, important games, kind of thing. And it's better now, I think, that all this stuff could probably be on YouTube and whatever, rather than you having to shell out 12 quid for a DVD or something like that. I know people do like these things, I suppose, for Father's Days and whatever, but it's one of those ones, I guess, maybe. But, more of that stuff, the better, because, again, that's the team. And we are, as fans, like the way they've got, in terms of when it comes to this type of board member or whatever, this type of marketing angle, it's about customer engagement. They want us to feel like we run the club, and like everything that we want to see from the club doing, they are doing. And obviously that's the kind of, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet kind of vibe we're getting from Brendan and Desmond and all this kind of stuff now. So yeah, I'm quite hopeful that it's just going to be really fun behind the curtain. We maybe get a bit more stuff like that, and maybe all their stuff that they're doing pretty well at just maybe gets a wee bit more polished up, like their wee studio they have in the stadium, and maybe their wee set they've got at Lennoxtown, and just wee bits like that. I think it'll all just probably level up and be very similar to, again, to throw other clubs out there. If you look at like AC Milan's social media, or Man United's and all these things, they've got cool wee settings for the players to do all this stuff in, and it just looks elite. And you bet your bottom dollar, every player checks that stuff out when they're linked to teams and all that. As they'll go in, first thing they'll do is they'll look at us, they'll look at fans, what do the fans think, and all the rest of it. They'll look at the main thing. And it's all this perception stuff. You want Lennoxtown to be an elite training facility. You want Parkhead to be a fortress. And then like with football's a bloody business. A lot of these players think about their own deals and stuff like that. And if they're in an environment that's going to help them with that, then again, that helps us attract more players in that as well. So I think it's one of those ones where we probably won't really feel too much of it, but you'll start to see little, they make a wee video every day now telling us of something, or, different wee bits and pieces like that might happen. But maybe something more grand, like a documentary or something, comes off the back of it. Who knows?
That'd be cool. Flying the wall, behind the scenes, seeing Danny McGrain and Brendan having chats and such like would be good to see. That would be giving us all an insight into finally what happens there. Be like an episode of Corey rather than anything else. But listen, so it all comes down to pound and pence as well. Let's face it, if it can generate more money for the club, then that's only a good thing, and more awareness of the club worldwide.
Yeah, because that's views for sponsors and all that kind of stuff as well. Now you're totally spot on. And on a kind of, I don't know if it's even unrelated, it's sort of parallel, right? But we had some breaking news this morning, Matthew, that Viaplay are probably going to be withdrawing from streaming, right? Which, when I first read that, I thought it's a very odd distinction to make, that they're not going to stream the games. So what, they're going to show them after they've been live or something still? Or it sounded a wee bit funny, but the notes that came through for us is basically they've got 3 years left on the contract with the SPFL. They've already paid the next 12 months in advance. So financially, Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs, Motherwell, and everyone else in between are getting their TV money for this year. No problem, no matter what happens. But, mate, this just feels like the same. It feels like Groundhog Day. It feels like we're always in the mire with some shitty TV deal that doesn't pay enough money. The company's went bust. The company's changed name. The company's been bought over. Or, how often does this happen? It happens like all the time. And Scottish football is like circling the drain financially because of this stuff. Yeah,
and we can talk about Celtic from a selfish point of view, and how we're a growing brand, and we've got money in the bank, and we're touring Japan and all the rest of it. The bread and butter is always the league, and how we're, and the TV deals that are there in order to let the fans around the country and the paying customer actually see the games. The SPFL and Neil Doncaster in particular are we're saying it again, as you said, Groundhog Day. The same people running, wearing their same suits and talking the same nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Just to try and they'll try and spin this in some way that is positive. the only way that they can do that is by possibly bringing in the new director we brought in, and bringing in somebody who's going to actually come in and make substantial changes to the way that the Scottish game is broadcast, not just in our country but around the world. I mean, Viaplay to start off with, I think they're going to be focusing on their Nordic viewing, which traditionally my understanding is that they broadcast like Scandinavian documentaries and stuff. I mean, they obviously dipped their toe into football, and it's clearly not worked for them. So where's been the due diligence from the people at the charge of our game to say that is this a reputable company who are going to, for the next 5-10 years, grow our game and give it the recognition and the money that it deserves? So as it's worrying again, Sky, the thing about Sky is that they're probably very stable. We know that their service isn't as great as it used to be. They're a staple, a stable kind of firm to be in cahoots with, but they still don't give the game enough coverage and enough money. So it's concerning. It is concerning again. So we've got the Scottish Cup, we've got the League Cup. We've also, there was international games that were all through Viaplay. What's going to happen now with them? And I get that if they've paid up and if we've got another couple of years or whatever it may be, but it's back to square one again. And I just hope that this time surely they can try and say that enough's enough. We need to get the best deal for the best money, and allow the consumer, the people who want to watch Scottish football, the opportunity to do that on a consistent basis. And the clubs up and down the leagues will be able to watch their teams play without constantly behind a paywall, and get the sort of service that they deserve. So it was sad news to see it, but not surprising as well, because it just seems to happen all the time in Scottish football.
Yeah, it's that vicious cycle. It never seems to end. And it really does feel like, it really saddens me, because like, see, for so much, like, see, being Scottish, before being a Celtic fan for a second, like, a big thing about being Scottish is, we invented shit. We are innovators. We are, forward-thinking people. This is very Scottish things that we all, you're nodding. I don't, everyone listening, this is probably nodding. You're like, yeah, that's us. We invented the TV. That's us. We're those people. So why does the SF football as well? Like, see, one thing. This is a kind of side note. I'm just going to hit you with quickly, right? It boils my blood whenever I see advertisement for the FA Cup and it says the oldest cup competition, because when you look at the Scottish Cup, it's actually older. And when you see it on the telly, like, again, they tell you what date it was established, and they're too scared to say this is the oldest cup competition. Yeah. Get it up, you FA Cup, and there's just no gumption about let's take our game and do what should be done with it. It's for the people of Scotland. It's for the people in Motherwell. It's for the people in Glasgow, Aberdeen, Dundee, fucking everywhere in between, to get their kids playing football, to support their local team. And, you don't need me to tell all this stuff. But by then, like, with the TV stuff, we've seen a lot of, I don't want to go too pie in the sky, right? But we've seen a lot of developments in world football over the last 5 years. This Saudi Arabia stuff, right, just as a little side note, a lot of that's TV money, because they were pirating the Premier League for bloody donkeys, and then they get caught out. So now they're just going to go and make their own Premier League and just get all the TV money. That's probably what they're up to, never mind like all the Sky deals over the years and the BT deals and whatever. But when you look across world football now, Saudi Arabia are making those moves. The MLS have got some mad, crazy deal with Apple. They've cut Lionel Messi in on the deal for subscriptions to Apple TV. They're putting every game on the telly. Doesn't matter if you're going to watch it or not. If you're a fan, you can. There's going to be shows on all the time. There is all that stuff on all over the place. And I've seen it in other divisions as well across world football, where, like, Korean football, you can just go into kleague.tv and you can watch every Korean game as it happens with English commentary. And Japan, Korea, all these every league around the world is trying their best to get as many eyeballs on them as possible without the attraction of a Celtic, let's say, for example, in their divisions necessarily. We're talking about Korea and some of these other places, Russia and whatever. But there's no innovation from Scotland. It's just, we need someone to take our TV deal. How much will you pay us? Okay, they only paid us 80 million. Thanks, guys. And that's it. There's no, like, grab the bull by the horns. Let's do something a bit different. Let's try and make something happen ourselves. Start a fucking website, make it on YouTube, members, and like charge everyone. I don't know. There's so many things you could do, and there's just no initiative. There's no nothing, you know, like.
I mean, we've heard it so many times, like the Netflix model, you know, where everybody pays a subscription and you've got access. I mean, the football fans in this country would they grudge paying 10, 15 quid a month to be able to get access to games, to be able to get access to their club, to be able to get access to you know, maybe reserve games or under 23 games, and we can start to actually see who are the up and coming Scottish players that are coming through. I think we need to look, you know, all goes back as well to league reform. You know, with the split, you know, again, there's going to be broadcasters or you know, people out there that are looking at Scottish football and going, what is this? You know, why are they splitting the league with 6 games to go, that you've got the team who's 7th get more points than the team who's 5th, and you know, and the same teams are playing each other 3 and 4 times. So that's where it boils down to a lot of it for me, is that we need to look at expanding the SPFL, and look to, you know, bringing through some other clubs through that are going to be able to add something to the game and benefit from it. You know, but you know, we talk about down south, the Championship is that, you know, it's a big country, England, but there's teams down there who, you know, it's like the 3rd highest, you know, attendances in world football or whatever. You know,
yeah.
And you know, that Scotland maybe need to take a wee leaf out of that and say, yeah, it's all good that we've got these big clubs down there, but they deserve to either have their chance up the league or brand the other leagues a lot better and give them a chance at success. So it comes down to the people at the top. They don't understand what fans want. They won't allow supporters and supporters groups their voice to be heard. They just insist, as you say, on just taking what they can and spinning it to be that it's a positive. And you use the phrase circling the drain. I mean, it's a scary thought to think what could potentially happen. And Celtic, out of pure selfishness, well, that's why we've talked about it for years, you know, European Super Leagues and different things, is in order for us to sustain the levels that we're capable of, we need to start looking at that. And it's a shame, because, you know, Scottish football is our bread and butter, and we want to be successful there and be part of a successful league that's branded well, that have teams competing in Europe season in, season out. But the longer that the people who are in charge are there, then the less likely that is going to happen.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think, like, probably, I'm trying to think as we're talking, what would the kind of, well, what you've made some good kind of devil's advocate points there as well. I think one of the things a lot of people say back to this as well, along with league reformation, is that the game isn't that attractive, the game isn't that good. Now, I totally disagree with that, because I think there is, if you were going to be quite clever with marketing the Scottish game, the way you would market it, if you were to be clever, in my opinion, is you would frame it as modern day old school football. You know, like, do you miss football in the 80s? Well, it's still happening in Scotland. Like, you know, like, do you miss just no nonsense tackles and like red cards and crap refs? It's in Scotland, you know, like, because a lot of people don't like Premier League, and some people, I love Bundesliga and La Liga. That's not everyone's cup of tea. There's tons of football fans out there, not just in the UK, that hate the modern game, hate tiki-taka and playing out with goalkeepers and crazy formations and all that. There's millions of football fans who just want to see some 4-4-2 and some knee-high challenges, you know. And like, we've got that. That's nothing to be. We don't need to change the game. You just need to understand what it is and lean into the good parts about it, and maybe make the rest a bit better. You know, actually pay for a good VAR system that works. Maybe get some goal line technology and just clean it up a bit. But you don't need to change the identity of it, because it's our game. You know what I mean? It's Scottish. Thoroughly.
Aye, it absolutely is. And I think we see that with snippets on Twitter constantly about how, you know, we've seen already with Dundee United in pre-season, and, you know, I think we don't want, you know, get coaches, you know, attacking fans and stuff like that. So we don't want to take that away from the game.
Totally.
We want Scottish football to be Scottish football uniquely. But I think they're trying too hard to change it to something that it's not. And I get, you know, you have to make some tweaks in order to make it appetising to broadcasters, etc. But I think you're actually right. I think, you know, we should be able to lean into the stuff that makes us unique, the weather and the pitches, the plastic pitches, and all that kind of stuff. And but it's we're having the same conversations every 2 or 3 years with the TV deals, and we're getting shafted. You know, we're going to see on Sky, no doubt. We've already seen about the Saudi Arabian stuff with Ronaldo when he went there. We're probably going to see more of it. The Premier League's only going to, you know, want then more money from Sky to try and get themselves, so they can go and buy the guys for 50, 60 million every week. So what will they do? Or Scottish football will show less games, or will invest less in it. But it's okay because they've got nobody else to watch the games. That's when the SPFL should be standing up, as you say, standing up saying, no, this is our game. You've paid us money for a long time. We want the best deal. And these are our demands. If you want to show Scottish football and you love Scottish football, Sky, here's what we expect from you. Here's what we want. This is what our supporters want to see. And if that's, call their bluff, if they say, well, that's fine, we'll, go elsewhere, right, fine. Go and create their own model, or go elsewhere and try and find it. But I don't think they'll do that. They're too scared. Yeah,
I think you're there as well. It is just cowardice, and that kind of, it's just, that's what it comes across as anyway. And I think in terms of league reformat and stuff like that, I could talk about that certainly to the cows come home. But yeah, it's one of those ones where it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of bubbles down. Another interesting detail, probably to finish this point on, is we've just recently seen that's the scheduled changing of the guard. Michael Nicholson's stepped down. The Rangers guy stepped up for the SFA role. I forget exactly what the position is. So I'm so glad that there's somebody at Rangers now deciding all this stuff for the Scottish game while this is happening. Yay. So I'm sure it's not going to be drama-free and without court cases.
Well, I think what, listen, they just copy us, don't they? Because Lawwell obviously was the puppeteer for so long, Scottish games, so they want to jump in on that, so let them do it, crack on, see what happens.
Yeah. Well, until next time, we'll have to wait and see on that. Matthew, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I've had a great time going through everything that's happened this week. I hope everyone that's listened to this has enjoyed it. Matthew's Twitter handle, by the way, I should have said this at the beginning. It's on screen in case you want to check him out on Twitter. Matthew, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Sorry.
Thanks for having us, mate. Really enjoyed it. And hail, hail.
Hail, hail. On screen now is some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I also made a little explainer for So Rare for any Celtic fans that are looking to get stuck on that for this season. And yeah, have a great day.